All right. Good evening, and welcome to our audience here at the Iowa City Public Library, as well as those of you who are watching this lecture live streamed on the library's YouTube channel. This is the first lecture for the League of Women Voters, Johnson County 2024-2025 session. Our next lecture will be here at the Iowa City Public Library on October 24. The title of that is The Hero You Don't Know, Hubert Humphrey and the Long Struggle for Civil Rights, with Samuel Friedman and Norman Sherman. And for those of you who want to register to vote or to request an absentee ballot, stop by the League of Women Voters Johnson County table after the program for help. Special appreciation goes out to our co-sponsors, the Iowa City Public Library, Burr Oak Land Trust, Sierra Club, Iowa City Area Group, Trail of Johnson County, and 100 Grannies. Burr Oak is not present this evening because of the recent death of their development director, Ashley Hopkins, who would likely have been here with us this evening. Our hearts and sympathies go out to her family, friends, and co-workers at Burr Oak. With respect to our program this evening, I want to bring to your attention that one of the League of Women Voters of Iowa's 2024 public policy priorities is the environment. We support increased funding for the environment and water quality initiatives, including REAP, and develop state climate change strategies. The League's concern about our environment led to hosting this panel presentation tonight in order for the public to become educated about the $30 million conservation bond on the ballot this November. The League of Women Voters, Johnson County, however, takes no position on whether we should approve this bond measure. But we do believe that this program tonight will enable all of us to make a more informed choice when we vote on it in November. Now I'll introduce our three co-chairs of the $30 million conservation bond. We have Brad Friedhoff. In 2002, Brad began his work with the JC Conservation, Johnson County Conservation Board, as the county naturalist. During his tenure, he assisted in the passage of the original conservation bond in 2008. After serving as the conservation program manager, Brad was recently selected to serve as the interim conservation director. Brad, his wife Tammy, and their children have made Coralville their home for the past 22 years. Pat Hayden. Pat spent her professional career advocating for the cause of the older adult. She retired in 2016 as the executive director of Oak Knoll Retirement Center. In 2018, she was elected to the Johnson County Board of Supervisors, serving as its chair in 2021. As a supervisor, she worked closely with the Conservation Board. She did not seek re-election in 2022. As a resident, mother, and grandmother, Pat has enjoyed Johnson County's parks, trails, and other properties. Josh Schamberger. Josh has been the president of Think Iowa City and the Iowa City Area Sports Commission for the past 23 years. He oversees the destination marketing and community betterment efforts for the greater Iowa City, Coralville area. He has been recognized as a leader of excellence by the Upper Midwest CVB Association for Bureau Innovation, Press Citizen, and Corridor Business Journal. Josh has lived in Iowa since 1997. He, his wife Jessica, and their 2 sons live in Coralville. And now I'll let the presenters go ahead into their program. Thank you.
Thank you. And hello, everyone. Josh, Brad, and I are pleased to be here tonight. Thank you to the League of Women Voters of Johnson County for the invitation, and thank you to the co-sponsors for being here and for all your support. We are here to talk about the $30 million conservation bond referendum that will be on the ballot in November, and what a yes vote for this new bond initiative will mean for all of us. But first, let me briefly explain how this referendum got on the ballot. Josh and I, as co-chairs of our Land, Our Water, Our Future Committee, attended the May 15th work session of the Johnson County Board of Supervisors to discuss the possibility of a new bond referendum on the November ballot. After much discussion, members of the Board of Supervisors voiced their support. It was decided that a resolution setting November 5th, 2024 as the date for a referendum to issue general obligation conservation bonds not to exceed $30 million over 20 years would be placed on a future formal Board of Supervisors meeting agenda. At its July 25th meeting, the Board of Supervisors approved the resolution by a vote of 5-0, and with that vote, this bond referendum is on the ballot. So now, let's go back to 2008. That year, a $20 million conservation bond was passed by a supermajority of voters. The bond was approved for pre-authorization of land acquisition and other conservation purposes in order to develop lands for public access, to protect the water quality in rivers, lakes, and streams, to protect forests, natural areas, and wildlife habitat from development, and provide for parks and trails. And that's just what the 2008 bond has accomplished. To date, it has been utilized successfully for 15 different projects. It has leveraged an additional $17 million in grants, donations, and revenues, acquired almost 1,200 acres of land, and built over 9 miles of hard surface trails throughout the county. It is an impressive story. And now, Brad is going to highlight those 15 projects funded by this 2008 bond.
Thanks, Pat. And thank you all for having me here tonight. I feel real comfortable behind a podium, talking to people, teaching them about the outdoors and what it is important about being out there and protecting those resources. And when we talk about flashing back to 2008, I'll flash back a little later and go to 2020, I guess not later, but 2020, when COVID hit us. And when COVID hit us, the projects you were going to see were a very important resource for our community. People use these for their mental health, their physical health, and to get outdoors when health-wise they were telling us to stay away from each other. And so these were the opportunities that we were given. I'm going to switch over to my PowerPoint here. We're going to talk about the conservation bond. Anytime you're out in our community and you're on some Johnson County properties, if you see this beautiful sign that was developed by our late director, Larry Gullett, that will tell you that this was a Conservation Board project that was funded with conservation bond funds that were established in 2008. And so this was our 2008 bond language. And unlike Josh and Pat, they're going to be up here telling you how to vote. I can't have an opinion. I'm here just like League of Women Voters to educate you about what we've already done and to showcase what we think we may be able to do with funds if we were giving them in the future. So this is basically the same language. There was some language that will be added into the 2024 ballot that is required by legislation. And then we turn that $20 million into a $30 million. And a lot of people say, well, why did you do that? Basically because of inflationary cost, right? We can't do as much with $20 million a day as we can with $30 million. So we're just going to go for a little increase, but tax-wise, you're probably not going to notice it much. So 2008, if anybody remembers, that seems like a long time ago for us all, but economically, we were going into a downturn, almost into a recession in 2008. And I remember standing, watching these ballots come in with Rod and Harry Graves, and early ballots came in great, and we were looking fine. But slowly, as the day went on, the ballots kept trickling down. And we barely passed it with 60.8% of the vote. This, because it's a resolution or a referendum, it requires 60%, a supermajority, to pass. And so that's why we're out here beating the bushes, telling people to look around, educate your neighbors, and make an informed decision on what you see out there. So what did we acquire? Well, we started a little bit slow in 2008. We were the first county in the state of Iowa to ever pass a conservation bond. And the guy back there in that orange shirt, this was part of his brainchild, right? And it was amazing work. And he said, no, you guys, we can do this. And he got together with Harry Graves, who was then the director, and we put this on a ballot, and we accomplished it, right? First county in the state. Since then, multiple other counties have followed suit. Lynn County, Polk County, and they've all made all these communities have made investments in their natural resources to protect for the future. We may be those islands in the rough in the years ahead because we have protected those resources. So let's take a little closer look at this. So we started off with 80 acres along Clear Creek to the west of Tiffin. That was a very important and beautiful area, 87 acres to be exact. And throughout this slideshow, I'm going to show you how hard we worked to take the investment that the citizens of Johnson County gave us and leverage that to get more funding. You'll see at the end, we took $20 million and we did $37 million worth of projects. And we expect to do the same the next time. So we would apply for just about every grant that was out there. We missed a lot, and that's okay, but we obtained a lot as well. And so with this one, we used a conservation bond and a conservation trust. And so we acquired that. That was about $400,000. The next step of that was to begin building trails. Now in 2014, I was hired as the conservation program manager and moved from my naturalist position to do a lot of grant writing and trail development. In 2010, this was one of the first projects the Conservation Department took on to begin building trails. And trails are important, right? That is the connectivity between our communities. We're here in Iowa City, but we have rural communities all around us. And we want to connect with the resources those communities have as well. And so these trails provide that connectivity. I love downtown Iowa City, but sometimes I just need a break from the concrete. And so I'll get on a piece of concrete that goes away, and I can be out in some of the rural communities and enjoy a little less busy environment out in those communities. This one I love because it's a tree canopied trail. There are wildflowers and wildlife all along it. That trail, we did conservation bond and a REAP grant for that. You can see the REAP grant paid for a large portion of that trail development, 85%, and we had a little bit of skin in the game with the conservation bond. The next project was a project that had been on our radar for years, right? This is the Chia Fen near Sutliff, and if you haven't been up to Sutliff, you need to go grab a burger and head out there and explore. The Chia Fen, a fen is a unique geological feature. There aren't many of them across the state of Iowa, but we have one of two nutrient-poor fens existing right here in our home county. The other nutrient-poor fen is in north central Iowa. Now, what makes a nutrient-poor fen, what gives it its definitions? Well, this is fed by groundwater, and in this case, it's groundwater moving through sand. There are very few minerals in that sand to feed that water, so it's nutrient-poor. There are unique plants that survive in these types of environments, and it was very important for us to protect this. This was owned by a farmer for years that had grazed it with hogs and sheep and cattle occasionally, and at one point they actually tried to bring an excavator in there to make this into more of a pond than a fen. Ponds are pretty common. We've got plenty of ponds. We don't have very many fens. So when we were able to acquire this, this was a great accomplishment of our conservation board, and we're very excited. This is the entire property. You can see the fen is the one, and we'll see if the pointer works on this. Right there is the fen. This is a degraded fen, and very unique features, but they have beautiful wildlife and plant communities up there. We have these huge wolf oak trees that exist all over the site, creating a oak savanna, if you will, that is between and to the west of our fence. And then we have beautiful flowers like this fringed puccoon that exist up there. I'll show you another slide here in a minute that has some more of those beautiful creatures. This is a race runner that's found that exists on the site. Many people don't think we have any lizards in Iowa, right? Well, we don't see them very often because they spend most of the year underground. But the reason we don't see them is because we don't have the habitat that they require. And so protecting this habitat where they live was absolutely important. Down there you have a cleft phlox that blooms up there. Very beautiful flower. A lot of people will go to this site just to see that and the fringed puccoon you saw in the earlier slides. So this was a really important acquisition. This, we got a REAP grant that paid for almost 60% of that, and the remaining 40% was paid with the conservation bond. You see the trend here that we're using small portions of the conservation bond to match with larger portions of funds from other resources, state resources and federal resources. Now, not only is it important to acquire lands, it's also important to be prepared to do projects and acquire lands. And so we have to do some planning. So in 2014, Larry Gullett was hired as our director. And Larry was meticulous about planning and it was very visionary. And so we did a lot of planning for a few years to develop things that when grants became available, we would be shovel ready. That's a key term you hear all the time, right? Grant writers are always, oh, do you have anything that's shovel ready? That means the planning's been done. All you need is the funds to construct it. And so we did that in several cases. Some of these we're in the process of doing right now. The beach, the shower house at the campground is underway. The beach needs to be underway because it has impacts on our lake, and so we're looking to make those improvements. The entrance has some work being done. And then the boat ramp, we've already completed all of that. That was part of our lake restoration, and we'll talk about our lake restoration in a minute. So again, this one, not a lot of people want to fund planning, right? It's a necessary tool, but nobody wants to fund it, right? But we use conservation bonds to do that. We also did some planning up at the Sutlip Bridge, the west side. This is the parking lot and restroom area west of the Sutlip Bridge. This allows visitors to come and explore the Cedar River crossing, the historic Sutlip Bridge, and all of the wetlands that we've developed up there. And so go up there, grab a burger, sit on the bridge for a while, talk to people, and then get out and explore. 100% conservation bond on that one. Again, planning. People aren't as excited, but that one's completed already. Cedar River Crossing, you just heard me talk about that. Well, what's the Cedar River Crossing? The Cedar River Crossing this is the first parcel I'll talk about agricultural lands. And you can see some agricultural lands up there, right? Okay. I'm a farm kid. I'm sure there's many of us in here that grew up as farm kids, right? And agriculture has changed drastically in the state of Iowa. We can produce more corn and soybeans per acre than we've ever been able to. Yet we keep farming more, right? And so we've had some farmers come to us and say, I'm getting old, I'm tired, I don't want to farm this. And they go, where are the flood buyouts for agricultural land? Rod, where are the farm buyouts for agricultural lands? There are zero. And so when those farmers come to us, luckily, they usually go to the board of supervisors first, and they go, where are our flood buyouts? And those don't exist. But the supervisors are able to go, guess what? We have a program here in Johnson County that we think will work exactly for what you're looking for. And so we are able to go in and buy those properties that flood frequently, and turn them back into wetlands. Why is that important? Because if this ground here, and I'm going to keep going so you can see some slides, that is the farm ground right there. I don't know, does anybody know what the commodity price is for rice paddies in Iowa? It's not good, right? We don't do well at growing crops underwater. So for this farmland, where they might plant it 10 years and they get a crop maybe 2 of those 10 years, the other years, we are paying crop insurance back to those farmers. And we as taxpayers are paying 60% of that bill for that crop insurance. Now, as wetlands, and we'll go back to those wetlands there, right? This land is much more valuable to us as residents cleaning up our water. So right here in the upper corner, you see what we call the nitrification pond, okay? Tiles, this state, I should say, if not the country, this state is covered with tile lines. And tile lines transport water off our landscape into our rivers and streams and lakes and ponds. But because that is all occurring underground, there's little opportunity for that water to be treated by this great big orange ball we have in the sky we call the sun. And the sun can do amazing things. With a little bit of sunlight, the nitrates that are in that pond water can break down. Now that the sediments fall out, those nitrates are gone, that water can move through this system, streams evaporate, go down into our aquifers, and move towards the Cedar River. Much less polluted than it was before. If I'm a farmer, that's what I want, right? I want to be able to produce crops, but I don't want to be blamed for any pollutants. So we think this is a win-win situation up near Sutliff, and we like it because it provides habitat, it improves water quality, it provides recreational opportunities for duck hunters, bird watchers, and people that just like to get outdoors. For the first part of that was 173 acres, and again, 72% of that, oh, not on this one, 72% of this one was conservation bond with 28% from the Conservation Trust. Now, we did have a wildlife habitat stamp grant for that project, but because, I'm going to back up here, but because we did a lot of work with wetland development in that, Larry had the great idea that we should invest in a wetland bank. And why would we invest in a wetland bank? Because all of the work that we were going to do restoring wetlands was going to cost us money. There are developers, there are other governmental organizations that are doing damage to wetlands and streams all across the state of Iowa. Every one of those people has to mitigate the damage they cause. And Larry goes, we're going to do this work anyway. Why don't we let somebody else pay us for that work? And so we returned our state wildlife habitat grant and entered this into a wetland bank, and we are selling credits from that wetland bank and doing really well at it. And we will consider additional wetland banks down the road because it's positive. It provides habitat and good recreational opportunities. Trails. Now, I'm kind of biased. I love trails because I worked on them for a lot of years. And I think, in my opinion, and I think some of these guys may be able to attest to it, I think they bring economic opportunities to our communities, right? So this was the Hoover Trail. This one I had State Recreational Trails Fund, State Federal Recreational Trails, Federal Land Access Program funds in it, and then Conservation Bond funds, okay? So this was one of the first projects I took on when I became the Conservation Program Manager. And I said, Larry, did we pick the hardest, most complicated project to do first? Because this passed through federal land, this passed through some of the Army Corps of Engineers property, it crossed through some of the Iowa Department of Natural Resources property at Lake McBride, but he said, this is how we do these, because these are connecting resources that the community needs. And so we connected all the way from Solon up to Seven Sisters Road, which is the Lynn-Johnson County line. And between that, you have Big Grove, you have Deb and Dan's Creamery, let's see what else, House Divided. There are all kinds of places that people now will come and visit because they're on a bike ride and they got a little parched on that ride and they need to stop somewhere to have a drink. Or they need to stop and I burned off quite a few calories. I better replenish them with a big ice cream shake, right? And so those are opportunities we want to create. They also connect all those communities, right? Ely, Solon, we have Lake McBride State Park. All of that is connected by trail now, and people are coming here to use it. So I talked about this. I should have waited. I had a few more slides later, but this is the wetland bank we developed at Cedar River Crossing. This was Larry's brainchild. He was the real numbers and process idea behind this, but you can see how complex this is. This was taking agricultural ground that farmers had flattened and converted into row crops and turning it back into its natural state. It took a lot of heavy equipment and it took a lot of planning, but we re-meandered streams through there, we developed wetlands, we built ponds, and it's paying high dividends. Here's some of the equipment. This isn't just go out in your sandbox and play type of equipment. This is like, we can build a mountain if you pay us enough. And it isn't easy. It's wet, it's muddy, but this big equipment can get the job done, and that's the investment it takes. It didn't take us long to convert this land in agricultural ground, and it doesn't take us long to convert it back if we have the funds to do it. So here's one of the meandered streams. Across the state of Iowa, we see streams that are straightened, right? That speeds up the water, it carries away soil, it carries away pollutants that go with it. Streams were meant to meander. They're meant to be relaxing, right? Go out there and follow the stream, and instead of walking a mile, you're going to walk 6 because you follow the stream. But that's what we want. Corville is doing a big project right now, re-meandering the Clear Creek stream on the northeast corner of the 380-80 interchange. And I'm excited to see what kind of outcomes that has. All right, so there's the cost, wetland bank sales, and we have the potential, it's always exciting to talk about. That wetland bank has the potential of making $6 million when it's said and done. So it will not only pay for its construction, it will pay for future conservation projects for us. Peckman Creek Delta, this is another property, this one on the Iowa River. So this was owned by Chris Westfall. His father owned it before him. And if you go down, this is on Sand Road just before you reach Highway 22. If you go down, the Westfalls have an old corn crib that stands next to Sand Road. And on the bottom, you'll see this little white line, and it says 1993 on it. And Chris, when we came down and looked at it, Chris goes, my dad said that we would never have a flood ever again that surpasses that line. About a few feet above that line is another white line that says the flood of 2008, right? And that was when Chris said, I give up, Mother Nature wins. And he decided it was his opportunity, and at that time he talked to one of the Board of Supervisors and said, I want to improve my standing in the agricultural community. What can Johnson County do for me to do that? And they said, well, there's no programs, as we mentioned before, but Johnson County Conservation is looking for properties just like this one. And so we've gone down there. Here's the great part about this. Much of the land around this was already in timber. He couldn't do very much. These agricultural fields, this was such poor agricultural soil, he could not even tile it. The water table was within 12 inches of the surface. And so Chris had hand dug over all the years their family had owned it, had hand dug small little drainage ditches across the landscape to drain water off of their farm. And he said, I'm tired of doing that. So we are now looking at opportunities on how we can restore this property. These parcels right here are still being farmed, and we're working with the same company that helped us develop the wetland bank at Cedar River Crossing to determine if it's feasible to do this again. Now, it's not always feasible for a wetland bank, but we always look into them and make those considerations. And again, this one, we got a REAP grant for that. We used conservation bond. We had a Whitetails Unlimited grant. This is a very popular place on the southern part of Johnson County. You'll see if you look at, Pat put a beautiful map up there. It shows where all of our properties are at. And people go, well, Brad, they're not all over the county. They look like they're concentrated in certain areas. Well, they are. They're concentrated in the areas where we have sensitive plant communities, important ecosystems that need protecting. We aren't down here in the southern part of Johnson County because that is some of our best agricultural lands. And when people ask us, those aren't the properties we're looking for, right? Iowa is always going to have agriculture. It's a huge economic driver in the state. But I do want to protect all of the stream and river corridors along there, and that's where we've started. Let's talk about a little bit about water quality, because when you read that bond language, it talked about improving air quality. It talked about improving water quality. This was F.W. Kent Park Lake. And at the top photo there, you see a before picture. On the bottom, you see a before picture. Does anybody know what you're looking at in that water there? Does it look very pleasant? That is blue-green algae. Blue-green algae you hear about in the news often. It's a algae that produces a toxin called microcystin. If we get that on our body and ingest that, it can damage our organs, make us very ill. If our pets go swimming in that, it can make them ill. It's been known to kill pets. People that let their dogs go out there swimming, unbeknownst to them, that pet licks that material off their coat to dry off like pets do, and before they know it, their organs are shutting down and they die. And the people have no idea what happened. Well, we knew this was a problem, right? We like people to get into our natural resources, enjoy them, and they expect us to make sure that they're safe for them. So we said we have to do something with this lake. And so we did a lot of work. Larry had done a lake restoration in Jones County, or had started one just before he came down here. He was a huge water quality advocate. And for years, Larry had us collecting water samples on that lake, so we had a baseline. We knew where we were at before we started the restoration. And then we came in here and we did all this work. We put stones along the shore to make it more inviting to families and kids. We put jetties. This is an underwater jetty, so when this is full of water, there's about 3 foot of water on top of this. And then we planted plants. And people go, you guys are crazy. You don't plant plants in lakes in Iowa. They'll take the entire thing over. Well, I grew up on a farm, and if you don't plant something, what do you get? You get weeds. You get what you don't want. And so Larry said, Brad, think about this. And I was like, that's amazing. Yes, we've got to put something in there. So we planted a lot of native plant stock that has disappeared from the landscape, but is very important to the ecosystem. And that is coming in beautifully. With this project, we got 55% of the money for it from the Iowa DNR Lake Restoration Program. Now, the amazing thing about that, the Iowa DNR Lake Restoration Program has invested monies in lakes all across the state of Iowa. Few of them have had the success that Kent Park Lake has had. And few of them have had the water quality that we've had. This year, we were proud to say we had very few, maybe 1 or 2 water tests that came back that they were a little higher than we'd like to see, and we recommended people didn't swim. But Lake McBride, the Coralville Reservoir, they had those advisories week after week after week. And if you have a large family and you might not have as much income as you'd like, it's a hot day, you can't afford to take all of your kids to the pool. But guess what? Kent Park's always there for you. And we're going to have the water quality you want to come out there and enjoy it. Back to my favorite things, trails, right? I love connectivity. I love communities. I love networking. And so I love that opportunity to be able to connect communities and see the opportunities that exist when we all work together. This is the Mahaffey Bridge Trail. The Board of Supervisors had built the Mahaffey Bridge, and they had the forethought, hey, we need to have a separated bike lane on there with some overlooks onto the Iowa River, and probably, in my opinion, one of the more scenic spots on the Iowa River. And so we have an underpass that goes underneath the Mahaffey Bridge Road to keep cyclists safe, and it is heavily used. So this connects from Mahaffey Bridge. If you would ride, this is part of the Iowa River Trail series. We call it the Mahaffey Bridge segment of the Iowa River Trail, but that connects all the way down to Terry Trueblood Recreation Area in Iowa City. Okay? So great opportunity to get out and explore Johnson County. Again, a lot of different funds were brought into this. We've got Metropolitan Planning Authority of Johnson County in there. We have some of our Region 10 transportation planning funds in there, and then some of our conservation bond trail funds in there. Now we're getting closer to the end here, and I'm getting into some of the ones that I think Larry, these were legacy style projects for him. They were ones that he really loved to talk about and loved to work on. The first one we're going to talk about is Chongleska Wakan. And at today's, I did a presentation earlier today, people asked me, well, Brad, what does Chongleska Wakan mean? That's That's not a normal word for most of us. Chongaleska-Wakan was the name that Dick Schwab and Catherine Burford suggested to Larry to name their property. It's a Lakota word meaning sacred hoop or circle of life. And that's what they wanted their property to represent, is everything starts here, everything ends here, it's all connected, right? And there's a lot of amazing things that happened that Dick built on this property. We purchased ground from him, but he also donated a lot to the conservation department. And I don't know if Dick Schwab really slept at night. I don't know. He might have been a vampire, because I don't know how he accomplished everything he did. But this is the property. Our friends at Burr Oak Land Trust that couldn't be here tonight, this is a property they have, so we adjoin them, and then it ties into the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I like to tell people that they ask me, well, what agency do you work for? What's your title? I said, I don't care what you call me. I'm just here to provide people opportunities to recreate outdoors. It shouldn't matter to you what agency I'm with, because the ultimate goal is the same for all of us. We want to get people outdoors. So let's look at some of the amazing things that Dick Schwab did on his property. And so this is the Celebration Barn, not to be confused with the Celebration Farm that's on Highway 1, right? So Dick had a hand in both of them, but the Celebration Farm became the private wedding venue, and the Celebration Barn at Chongaleska-Wakan is the one that is owned by Johnson County. Beautiful site. He built this all with woods that were harvested near his home, right? There are 7 different types of trees, species of trees just in this timber. The amazing thing about this, and Seth Somerville, who was a Burr Oak Land Trust employee, and then we stole him away to work for Johnson County Conservation. He works out here, and he tells me how often the lightning strikes very close to this site. And I go, well, that kind of makes sense, because the first time Dick built this barn, it was hit by lightning and burned to the ground. Now, of classic Dick Schwab fashion, he's like, oh, I guess we have to get back to work. And so they swept it off. They poured another 6 inches of concrete. So this has got a 14-inch floor of concrete underneath it. And they rebuilt it with all his friends and neighbors again. And so that's the type of resiliency I believe our community should have. This is the fireplace that's in there. All the wood is locally grown and harvested after it's died. The stone for the fireplace all came from Anamosa area. He did other amazing things. So this is the labyrinth and arch, freestanding arch that is located behind the barn. Now the labyrinth, I was giving Dr. Seymour, who is the superintendent for Clear Creek, Amana. He was at the meeting we were at earlier today, and he was telling me, he goes, I just got like 3 more housing developments that are coming into the Clear Creek, Amana School District. I don't know where I'm going to put all these students. I was like, Dr. Seymour, it sounds like you need to go out and walk in our labyrinth. So this is built after the labyrinths that were built in France, and you walk through them, and as you do, you meditate, you let your mind clear, and it's supposed to help you get a clearer thought, be able to think clearer, and make important decisions. And so that was amazing. The freestanding arch is supposedly the largest freestanding arch in North America. And so they built this, and I can just imagine, much of the things that Dick Schwab did on this property, there's no way we could have done with as a government agency. First of all, I can only imagine the woodworking he had that held this thing up, and the guy standing in loader buckets going, okay, we just got to get this one more rock going in, and we'll be fine. And OSHA people are standing over there, are you sure those aren't government people? No. Because he was able to do stuff that the rest of us probably wouldn't have been able to do. But this is a very popular venue, overlooks a beautiful pond. People will get married out here on the labyrinth and under the arch, and then go back inside for their reception. We only host about 10 to 12 events out here a year. It isn't meant to be a wedding venue space, right? But there are some people that are still very attached to it, so we do a few out there. We also do some nonprofit events for the community, for Solon, and some of the other stuff that Dick did when he was still here, because we like to keep those things running. They were kind of Dick's legacy. We also have a CSA out there, right? The Johnson County Poor Farm, the Board of Supervisors are very supportive of CSAs. It's very important when you think about it. There was an article I read, I think about the port workers on the East Coast maybe, and if they go on strike, how quickly we would run out of fresh fruit, or at least some varieties of fresh fruit here in the United States. And that's horrific. At one time, our grandparents grew everything they needed to survive on the land behind their house, right? Today, we're resilient. We saw the panic that existed when COVID hit and shelves became bare. People were hoarding toilet paper and other necessities they thought they needed. And then years after we came out, people were like, hey, do you need some toilet paper? I've got like 20. It's like, okay, you over-prepared for that. But I think it's great that we are taking these steps to prepare ourselves and to take care and build resiliency into our community. We grow food for people, right? You all hear the phrase, right? America needs farmers because we feed the world. Yeah. Okay. Linda's heard my speech before, okay? We no longer are really feeding the world. We're feeding ethanol plants and livestock. The state of Iowa is actually corn deficit. That means we do not grow enough corn in the state of Iowa to feed all the livestock we have and for all the ethanol plants we have, right?
In the 1800s, 50% of Americans were farming. In 1945, Americans grew 45% of their food in their backyards. In 2020, Americans grow 0.1% of their food in their backyards.
So, Linda makes my point very clear that these are important. And we have a lot of great ones going on out at the Johnson County Poor Farm. Our local foods director, she does a phenomenal job working with people throughout the county. And we had a CS there that we wanted to continue going forward as well. We also got some really cool stuff there that most people would never imagine exists in Johnson County. So this is an old railroad car from Jerry Menga. Jerry fully restored this, and this exists out on the property that Dick Schwab gave us. And people always ask me, Brad, when is that open? And I go, I'm working on it, all right? Our conservation board has a plan, but it takes time to develop exhibits and make them so they're publicly available. Most of the other stuff on this site is always available. You can go out and look at it. This is a little more difficult. We have to roll it out on the railroad tracks. There's also a pump hand cart there that the kids sometimes ride. But in the future, you will see more of that. These are some of the other round barns that are found on the Schwab property. This barn in the lower corner has a woodworking shop in it. And we're in the midst right now of having our education specialist, Frances Owen and Katie Freeman from Iowa City here as our woodworking instruction class for women. And the goal of that class, I don't think I have any pictures of it, but the goal of that class, we take all of this wood that Dick never saw a tree that was dead that he didn't see lumber out of, and so he would save everything. He donated a sawmill. This is a dryer here. And so we take this lumber, and the objective of our class is to teach women how to be comfortable with tools that were once thought only to be run by men, right? Old hat, right? So we're teaching those women to be comfortable, and we have women instructors doing it because that's the most comfortable they get. And so we take this thing and we teach them how to use the tools to turn a natural resource, a renewable natural resource, into things we can use, right? I love IKEA, but it's not as high quality as I'd like to see. There's also a lot of history there. So all of these tractors were tractors that Dick donated, right? We didn't pay for these. I don't let a lot of people get out and ride these or drive these because most kids today don't know how, don't know how to drive a narrow front tractor and how tight of a turning radius that has. I grew up on those. I know it can be standing upright like that and be on its side the next second if you don't know what you're doing. But they are beautiful pieces of equipment out there, and they really provide a lot of nostalgia for our visitors. But even more importantly, this is what we're really after, right? All those buildings and structures are great, but it's the opportunities to spend time outside for our mental and our physical health. Right? There are places around the world that lack these, and you can tell they lack these. And we were talking about, the other day, we were talking with Gary Watts, and I talked to him, I was like, how fundamentally crazy was it when people proposed in New York City that they wanted to keep a huge park in the middle of town? We're going to keep this area, we're going to call it Central Park. It's really important. And skyscrapers are going up around it, and I'm sure the developers are just going crazy. How can we get a hold of this land and turn it into something? It is something today. It's probably the most important thing New York City has. And smog levels are lower in New York City compared to other massive metropolitan areas across the United States because of that green space that's in the middle of that great town. So this young man, he's doing some writing. We are the city of literacy, right? And so we've got students out there writing and reading and doing poetry out on the river, listening to birds, listening to the babbling of the streams. It doesn't get much better than that. And here they are enjoying themselves, standing on the fireplace. That acquisition, you know, it looks like a lot of money, but we spent nearly $3 million on that. But with all of those gifts that they gave us, it actually ended up being almost a $1.3 million donation by Dick and Catherine to the Conservation Department. And let's keep rolling. As I go through these end ones, these were all ones that were very special to Larry. This is the Melinda Rife Riley Fen and Prairie. This is located north of Solon on Highway 1. And this is a paha. Okay, these are kind of unique. We're down here on the southern Iowa surface, and we've got the Iowa erosion surface to the north of us, and those two different geographical land regions come together in about this area. And this is wind-blown sand that makes this huge ridge. Now, this wind-blown sand was not farmed, and so it has some very unique plant communities, and even more importantly, as you see Lake McBride here. And if you follow these little blue lines, you'll see that's near the headwaters of Lake McBride. And I already talked about Kent Park has some of the best water quality for places to go fishing and swimming, but we've got to keep making improvements, right? Mother Nature is very resilient. She will repair herself if she is given an opportunity. And how do we give her opportunities? We place little Band-Aids on the landscape and keep making those Band-Aids bigger and bigger. And pretty soon, those scars that are on the landscape will heal, and the earth will get better. And that's what we're trying to do, piece by piece. And there's some amazing stories. This is Ray Anderson, who's was a geologist at the University of Iowa, and he specialized in glacial erratics. And glacial erratics are the big stones that were placed in the glaciers as they moved south, and as the glaciers melted and retreated, those heavy stones were left behind. These stones were very important in my childhood because I got to ride around on hay racks and pick them up in farm fields all across northeast Iowa. So I have a great affinity for glacial erratics. But the really big ones are super cool, and this one is one that was pushed down from near St. Cloud, Minnesota. I can hardly stand to drive to St. Cloud, Minnesota that long, and this guy rode down in a glacier from there. So another great acquisition, conservation bond, 43% from our REAP grant. And then we're getting towards the end here, but another property that was very special, Larry. This is a 2-horse farm. This was the Brian and Aaron Malloy property. Pat and Enid Kinsella owned it. Aaron was their daughter. And amazing people, amazing property. They bought this in the 1970s. Pat was a doctor, a brilliant doctor, and he was from Canada, but they had been all over the United States, and they finally settled here in Iowa City in Johnson County to raise their family. And when they first bought it, this is the new part of the house, but the backside is an old Sears Roebuck kit house. And I'm not going to age you guys, but usually when I tell the kids that, they go, what's a Sears Roebuck? I was like, it's an Amazon.com house that you'd buy, and it was a kit, and then you'd come put it together. So this is the Sears Roebuck's house. Amazingly, if anybody's really into stories and history, this is the same format as the house that was in Villisca where the axe murders took place. So I'm just saying, it's kind of neat. This portion of the house was built in 1992. Enid was a historical architect, or at least really enjoyed that stuff. So she required that the builders of this section do all the work to ensure that it matched the original Sears Roebuck house. But it's one house, but there's actually two houses there. This was also a property that Larry worked very hard with Brian and Aaron Malloy to make sure that there was a parcel that was set aside for the Iowa. Now, everybody always asks, why the Iowa tribe? Well, Larry was heavily connected with a lot of Native American groups, and Lance Foster, a member of the Iowa, had reached out to Larry at one point. He said, Larry, you know, you've been in conservation boards all over the state of Iowa. If there is ever an opportunity for us to own land back in the state that's named after us, that has a river that's named after us, we would love that opportunity. You see, the Iowa were pushed out of the state of Iowa in the early 1800s. One of their last encampments was down along the Des Moines River. And they were in really tough times. They still are in really tough times. They are now in a reservation in Nebraska and Kansas. And so the Malloy said, yeah, we think it's important for them to own land back in the state. So 190 years almost later, they own land back in the area that was once their territory. And they've come up and they've celebrated with us. The number 7 is very significant to them. So it's a 7-acre circle that overlooks the Iowa River. We have a management agreement with them because they don't have a lot of opportunities to come up and visit it. But it was very special when they came back and felt like they were again a part of our state. So this is the grounds, and you can see on there, there's the 1890 Sears Roebuck. Oh, I was a couple years off. 96 edition. It still has the old original cook shed, the barn, and the barn houses, it must be coming up. The barn houses the RARE program, which is the Raptor Rehabilitation and Advocacy Group. Enid was a huge gardener, so she has a European garden around the house. It's got some beautiful plants, some native. Here's some of the birds from the RARE program that are in the barn. Got to check my time here before Pat starts yelling at me. I'm getting close to the end. And then some of the stuff that's still going on. This is the Hoover Trail between Morris and Oasis. We've received parcels that have been donated. I'm just showing you things that we bought with the conservation bond. But we've had parcels of trails. We had Phoebe Timber, which is down off of Old Man's Creek, which the Williams family donated. And that's generated a lot of other donations down the road. And then we're working on this Clear Creek Trail extension out to FW Kent Park. I've got $3 million in federal funds that's burning a hole in the state DOT's pocket, and so we need to get that bid by December and hopefully be in construction for that. And again, here's all that money with that. And then that's what we were excited about. We took the $20 million, leveraged $17 million more. We acquired nearly 1,200 acres in Johnson County, constructed 9.2 miles of trails. But it's not these numbers. It's the health and well-being of our residents, the sustainability of the landscape here in Johnson County, which is the real investment we're all here to make. Now, I'm going to have Pat come up and talk about how do you become one of those properties that we select.
Thank you, Brad. I promised you it was going to be an And I hope you agree with that. And then you throw Brad's enthusiasm on that, and why wouldn't you vote yes for this bond issue? So Brad, well done. And we saw too, you know, through the funding, that conservation has really been an excellent steward of the bond funds, and it's just really very exciting. But the funds are depleted. There are none left. So let's move to present day, 2004, and it's time to build on that solid foundation and continue the work with this new bond referendum. One of the most frequently asked questions is what projects are planned with this $30 million bond fund. Conservation, of course, would like to upgrade the swimming area at Kemp Park Lake, as well as complete the Kemp Park Campground Shower House. And Brad had alluded to that when he was highlighting Kemp Park and the renovations. Also, and Brad alluded to this also, you know, extending and connecting existing trails has always been a goal, and as we look forward, that will continue on too. But beyond those projects, Brad and his staff and the Johnson County Conservation Board don't have a list of projects identified, but what they do have is criteria used when prioritizing lands for acquisition by Johnson County Conservation. So let's take a look at that criteria and provide examples from the 15 projects we've already highlighted. So there are 5 criteria. The first is consider areas as high priority for acquisition if they include rare or unique flora, fauna, or geological features, include cultural associations, historic sites, or uncommon plant and animal communities, are adjacent to existing public areas, include lands that are critical to improved water quality, protect or enhance critical view sheds for visitor use of existing public lands in river or stream corridors, are supported by regional, state, or federal plans addressing conservation and preservation of natural and cultural resources. Brad, can you give us an example of?
So a lot of those that you guys see up there, you could see those, they continue out through a lot of these projects. So when we talk about areas that are supported by regional, state, federal plans addressing conservation and preservation of natural and cultural resources. In the southern part of Johnson County, we are in a reptile and amphibian conservation area. Southeast Iowa contains more reptile and amphibian populations, rare and unique, than any other part of the state. And so protecting areas like Peckman Creek Delta that you saw on there is one of those areas. Chia Fen would meet many of those areas. Two Horse Farm and Peckman Creek Delta, or excuse me, Two Horse Farm and Chetkaleska-Wakan would meet many of those things. And so a lot of these things, you will see they are going to hit multiple points as we discuss them as priorities for projects and properties.
Thank you, Brad. So criteria number 2, consider natural and cultural resource planning projects as high priority if the project includes collaboration of governmental agencies, nonprofit organizations, businesses and residents. Highest priority is given to projects that include collaboration of groups that normally don't network with each other.
And again, Two Horse Farm, classic example. This property was adjacent to, I'll pick a word, adjacent to Army Corps of Engineers property, right? And so to government agencies, yeah, we like to put boundaries out there, but to the public, it really doesn't matter. And so we were able to collaborate on a lot of these projects with them. The Iowa tribe, we rarely get opportunities to work with that cultural organization. And so now that we were able to have the landowners have enough forethought to give them property back, we have mutual agreements with the Iowa that we will hopefully continue to develop and grow as we go into the future.
Great. And now I'm going to turn it over to Josh.
Oh, don't you have 3 more? That's me.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Josh. Okay, you're up, right? Okay, I'm not moving.
Good evening, and thanks again for the opportunity to visit with all of you here today and those that are online. Before I go through these final 3 and then just offer up some of my comments, I want to start by echoing Susan's thoughts regarding Ashley Hopkins.
Yes.
You know, my thoughts are certainly with Burr Oak, the DVIP community, and everybody in this community who are fortunate enough to know Ashley and be touched by Ashley. These final three Conservation Board criteria for purchase, we wanted Brad to stay up here to give you real-life examples. Again, we can be the ones to tell you, please vote yes, but Brad can't. So number 3 is supports environmental and cultural education programs that increase awareness and active involvement in addressing environmental issues, appreciation of nature, cultural resources, and provide outdoor recreational opportunities.
So just about every property we get, we showcase these things. We select areas as educational hubs. Changleska-Wakan will serve as one of those educational hubs because it has the infrastructure to allow us to go out there. And as I said, there's a Burr Oak Land Trust property that's adjoining this property that has a lot of archaeological artifacts on it from cultures that existed prior to settlement, European white settlement here in this area.
Number 4, considers recreational developments as high priority if they protect, enhance, interpret natural and cultural resources, provide a healthy lifestyle and energy-efficient use of natural resources. And before Brad gives some examples, I think this is an area that I live and operate in very closely. I was just on one of those 9 miles of trail. Today was such a beautiful day that I don't tell anybody, but I left work at 3 o'clock and I got on my bike like I do every day and I rode on those trails, and I actually was showing a picture. I took a picture of the sign right out there by Lake McBride to remind folks that this was made possible by the conservation bond. And so it is tremendously important to me and my family that we have those opportunities and the trail system. He mentioned the one to Terry Trueblood, but once you get to Solon and you get on the trail, which also has a nice sign by Conservation Bond, you can take that trail all the way to downtown Waterloo. And I've actually done that. It's 93 miles from Coralville to downtown Waterloo on that trail. Call me crazy, but it was a lot of fun and I didn't have to worry about any cars.
And that is exactly what that priority area is there. He has efficient use of natural resources. He's not driving up there in a car. That's all manpower, right?
Well, I don't know about that.
And he's riding up there. And while he's out there, he's able to be around cultural, natural resources and improve a healthy lifestyle, right? Clears his mind. I'm glad you went out there. It's probably good for your mental health and physical health.
And the last criteria for purchases is consider upgrade of infrastructure, park amenities as a high priority for the improvement, mitigate negative impact on natural resources. A lot of this we're seeing right now in Coralville with that Clear Creek trail, provide improvements to accommodate existing high visitor use and ADA requirements.
Yeah, and this is what you're seeing going on at FW Kent Park. FW Kent Park was really established in the late 60s, early 70s. A lot of the infrastructure that is in there is about the same age as like this age, right? And so it's not aging well. Some of those septic lines are starting to deteriorate, and so it was very important. A lot of the money we received from the Board of Supervisors to upgrade that, but they were having negative impacts on the water quality of FW Kent Park Lake. And so we've taken those out, improved them, and hopefully are having positive impacts on our natural resources now.
So now for some thoughts in my presentation skills, and I was last because I'm trying to adjust, so my comments I just cut down in half so we could leave a lot of time for questions and answers, which I know is really important, Susan, and others. But first of all, I mean, I just got to tell you, how lucky is this county to have Brad as one of our leaders? I mean, incredible. And he's like a tireless volunteer. You know, my day-to-day as with the CVB is bringing in, I can speak about wrestling and cycling and all these big things that come to town. I just finished Herky-Arm Parade. I'm done with that for 10 years, for sure. But Brad is at everything in his time off. He is Matt clocks, whatever I need him. He's just such an incredible community member. So my presentation skills aren't anywhere as talented as these two. I know my role. As sometimes we say, aces in their places, and my place has been to raise money for this campaign and try to get the word out, which quite honestly is a lot harder in 2024 as it was in 2008. And the big thing is really just getting the word out and getting it in front of voters. It's just so different than 2008 when people largely read the local newspapers. Now, you know, where you go and find information and accurate information is a bunch of different ways, and it's largely depending on what you like or click. The algorithm changes and only continues to feed you certain things. So it's tough. So my job has been to raise money, and thankfully I have Pat, who's the rock star of all rock stars here, as my partner to make me look good at time. So before we open it up to questions, I was asked just to provide a couple testimonials as to what this has meant to me. And I wanted to start particularly with work. You know, as I mentioned in the opening, I've been serving this community and honored to serve this community as the leader of the destination marketing efforts and working on quality of life community betterment for 23 years. And I live in a world of economic development. That's at core what I do. And I can tell you that those that are looking to move to this community, to be part of this community, to raise their families in this community, are largely making these decisions on this sort of stuff. It's quality of life, community betterment. And those rank the top. In many cases, they rank before tax incentives and things like that, is where, when we're bringing in workforce, what is the quality of life? What do the schools look like? What do the trail systems look like? The parks and recreational opportunities. So it has been critically important, the work that has been done since 2008. My family, you know, really, quite honestly, we wouldn't live anywhere else in the state. And unfortunately, the state is sometimes a little different where we line up than where this community lines up, and that's why I'm just so lucky and we're fortunate to call this community home. You know, our neighbors, because of all of you. This is a community that shares our values. It shares our priorities. You know, critical discourse is revered here. Hard work is honored. And climate conservation is a top priority. We were the first county in the state, as mentioned, to pass a conservation bond. There have been 2 counties since us, Lynn County and Polk County, that have followed Johnson County's lead. And now they have incredible conservation bonds. I believe Story County is up with us this time around.
Yes.
So we are setting the path, and I hope our community will continue to respond to conservation and this opportunity. Briefly, you know, conservation, water quality, trails, parks. You know, we're so fortunate to live here, as Brad said, our physical and mental health. That's really what I love most about being on my bike is kind of resetting, and we need that sort of now more than ever. 2008 was certainly a most prideful year for this community when we did pass that, and so I'm just really excited, and I would ask, my family would ask for all of your vote on Election Day to allow Brad and our other local conservation leaders to continue to do just that and lead and build on this momentum. Before we open it up to questions, and I think we're getting real close to being back on time, you know, I know one of the big questions besides are you just going to buy farmland, which is asked a lot, and I think it's been proven since 2008 that's not the case. The only farmland that's been purchased has been people knocking on the door for land that isn't able to be farmed. But the other big question is how much more and what's this going to cost? And I think that's most important. We're asking for the public trust. We've held true to that. These conservation dollars have been audited every year. That's why we actually take that so seriously. We put it in the ballot language. And so we're doing that again. We don't have to, but we're doing that again. Essentially, what this is going to cost is we're going to be asking for an additional $2.09 per 100,000 of assessed value is what this bond will cost for the $30 million. So if you live in a $300,000 home, we're asking you for $6.27 more per year to allow Brad to continue the momentum. That's on top of the existing $5 that's been in place since 2008. So I could certainly speak more to that, but I think we want to get over here and start to answer some questions. And again, just really appreciative of this opportunity tonight.
Thank you very much. And now, it is time for questions from the audience. Please raise your hand if you have a question. And also, please wait until I come to you with the microphone. It helps because we are recording this.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I think many residents of the county do go to many of the county parks and other locations without knowing necessarily that they're county locations. So my question is, when we talk to people, what are some of the most populated, most used county sites? It may be some of these that you've done in the last 15 plus years, but maybe it's other ones. And maybe, Brad, you could tell us what are the 2, 3, 4, most used locations, so that when we talk to people, we can say, have you been to this place or that place? Oh, that's a county. Oh, and that could be helped by this bond.
Yeah, definitely. Most often, for years, Johnson County Conservation Board put all of our eggs in one basket, and we called that FW Kent Park. And that is still the gemstone of the Johnson County Conservation Board. But we've worked very hard to spread our organization out as well. And so you're going to see properties down in the southern part on the Iowa River, Peckman Creek Delta, Two Horse and Cedar River Crossing, Chongleska, Waukon. I think all of those, Cedar River Crossing, Two Horse Farm, and Chongleska, Waukon, are all very popular. Now, one of the big goals of the Conservation Department is to not change those destinations. We talk to our colleagues that are in national park systems, and you guys have probably all heard the horror stories of the petrified forest literally growing legs and being carried away by visitors. So we don't change the sites drastically because we don't want to love them literally to death. And so we don't market some of the areas very heavily, but we want our residents to know that they're fragile, sensitive sites, but we want you to get out there and explore them. Kent Park is definitely considered one of our high-use recreational areas, and then those trails. People from all over eastern Iowa utilize those trails every day, whether it's biking, hiking, walking, getting to and from school to home. Those trails are used for a wide variety of reasons, and those are the opportunities where you can get out there and go from one place to another. And it's not just for us. I mean, I love showcasing Johnson County areas, but they connect to other properties too. Many of our trails run adjacent to Army Corps of Engineers ground. We have connectivity to Lake McBride, and then we have connectivity to our communities. We look, one of the reasons you see this group up here is we look for partnership opportunities, right? We want to go where there are population bases and do some of the projects in those locations too, because that's where the people need them. So it's protecting those green spaces that might be a little bit further away and building recreational opportunities into more of our heavily populated areas. Does that answer your question, Todd? Thank you.
I'd like to answer that as well. It's a great question because I actually was asked the exact same question by the president of a local bank when I went in and asked him for some money to help with this campaign. And he said, now, Josh, why would we get involved in a conservation bond? And I said, do me a favor, send an email out to every single person at this bank and ask them how many people have been on these two trails in Johnson County. How many people have enjoyed Kent Park? How many people would appreciate the trail that's coming to connect Tiffin by trail to FW Kent Park? And then you get on a trail anywhere and you can ride trail all the way to Kent Park. And he said, I bet you that's going to be a high percentage. And I said, that's exactly right, because it's quality of life for your employees and this community, and every one of them have been on that trail.
How can we get the word out? I see there's signs here. Those of us that are here probably are very interested and very supportive. Yes. I only knew about it about a month ago. You're in the business of trying to get the word out. I think a lot of us are very supportive. I would be glad to take a sign home. That's only one little thing. I'd like to know what you all suggest.
What I tell people is that, Brad and I will travel anywhere, and Josh also, that your other groups that you belong to, or, book clubs or whatever that may be, just reach out to us, and we will literally go anywhere and everywhere to get the word out, whether it's 3 or 4 people or 100 people we're going to be there. So any suggestions that you have for us, we are ready to go. And if take more than one sign, if you can talk to a neighbor or again, your friends and family. So that's what I'm telling people, and we're just trying to be really creative. Radio stations, print, and just one vote at a time. One vote at a time.
Yeah, with a campaign like this, we are raising as much money as we can to get that word out, but there's a strategy, and we knew that if we started doing a lot of this in June, which we did the parades and everything, but we started spending money, November's a long way away. So we really have focused all of our attention, the resources that we do have, to starting to fire right now.
Right.
The next 6 to 8 weeks, hopefully, if we do our job, you hear a lot about it.
Right.
On the radio, on direct mail, the areas of opportunity we do have, and keep it top of mind. But to Pat's point, I mean, I spent all of August visiting with about every single cycling club in town that I could. We've all had our little areas of focus. If you're part of a group, if it's a Monday night book club or a Wednesday night quilting club and there's 4 people there, I will come to your house and speak to those 4 quilters.
And I volunteer for those wine clubs anytime, so just let me know. And we're also farmers markets, and it's not just Iowa City, University Heights and Swisher and obviously Coralville and Solon, they're finished. But yeah, we're just working all of Johnson County.
And hopefully a lot of people follow the media. Next Tuesday, 10 a.m., turn on Charity Nebby, Talk of Iowa. Yes. I will be on there talking, hopefully with some of our colleagues from Story County. Now, I didn't mean this to be a rival conservation bond, but this is the Cyclone Country and the Hawkeye Country. You guys can't let me down. We got to sell this big. So get out there and tell all of your friends. Come on, Brad said this is us against the Cyclones about conservation. Who wants it more? We want it more. Come on.
My son is the Cyclone, but he has an absentee ballot for here.
Okay, good.
So we're good.
Well, and you guys are doing such a good job on the issues, and that was such a great question, Tom, because that's the kind of thing people want to know. From the purely crass political hackery class, I will proudly raise my hand.
Mr. Dvorsky.
And remind people, for me, this thing sells itself in a lot of ways. This is a community that, they see the benefits. The messaging, they've got to turn that ballot over.
Yes.
Yes.
They've got to turn the ballot over. It's a 60% thing. The powers that be that set up a 60% thing made it so that it would be hard to do. So for me, whenever I talk to anybody about it, all I say is turn the ballot. I am just harping on turn the ballot over. And well, yes. Yeah. Because I'm generally talking to people who I know are going to vote yes. But I think because voting is going to start in a couple weeks, and then the mechanical, logistical nature of how to get the vote.
Right.
We just got to be pounding the heck out of people that it's a 2-sided ballot.
And that's really, we've tried to remember to have that part of the discussion every time too, to flip the ballot and, be sure that they look at that other side.
Yeah. And talk to your poll workers, make sure to remind them, tell everybody, hey, there's 2 sides to this ballot. It's just good voting.
Have you thought about making buttons that people could wear for the next few weeks?
I'm going to let...
We haven't, but I will have them start being made tomorrow.
Well,
because we have a button maker in our
the important part is the date and turn
Flip
the
yes,
ballot over.
Yep.
And yes but of course we support it. And the Iowa City Bird Club, we have a member who's very good at talking about these things, so we won't have you guys come over, but I'm hoping to have a motion so that we could add our name to a list of organizations for you. And I think everybody else who has groups that would consider supporting it, get the name approved by your group and then get it to Pat or...
Yep, Josh.
Josh.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know Josh. Okay, thanks a lot.
In 2008, you had T-shirts.
I was going to mention...
We have them. He's wearing one over... Oh, they're modeling it right now.
Yes.
Jim's got one. Yeah.
Yes, and
Yeah.
you can,
Come on, we have one over here too.
Modeler. We have a.
Men's and women's modeler.
Yes.
and you can go to the website.
Yeah.
and-
We do,
Yes.
ourlandwaterfuture.org.
.org.
Our landwaterfuture.org, and it's
It
on
should be
the
on the card in front of you.
cowboy card. Yeah, at the bottom,
Yep.
So you can buy t-shirts on the website?
yes.
Good.
I was surprised the other morning to look out my kitchen window and found a sign in my yard. I did sign up for it. but
Okay, good, thank you.
And I stood there and looked at it and looked at it, scratched my head, what's this about? And I found it very confusing because it doesn't literally say, this is a bond issue that's going to be on the ballot, and it doesn't say anything about turning it over and everything. Is there a way that we can slap a little sign across that makes it more clear?
We can talk about that. I mean, we are, as a group, we're meeting in a few days, and it went through, quite a few revisions in what we wanted to put on it and what that looked like and people reviewing it. So definitely appreciate your feedback. That's most important to us going forward, and we will take that into consideration. So thank you.
One of the things we put on it, in right or wrong, I mean, we wanted people that were walking by yard signs in other people's yards who hopefully have come accustomed a little bit in the COVID era to scanning QR codes and reading a menu or something to just scan the sign and go right to the page. So we took up a little bit of real estate for that. It was a lot of long discussions to get to this. Even the colors.
Yeah.
We're like, are we too West High? No, but this is conservation. Conservation should be green. Rod with Fartabella, he can attest to some of this.
But thank you.
We can be better.
Thank you for your feedback.
So we have a question from our election officials in the back there.
No, I'm just a voter registration volunteer, but thank you. So I'm going to be proud, Johnson County, thank you for leading us into this, Brad. What would it take, do you think, for us, and how do we, as citizens of this great state, work to convince the rest of the state that we need to do this? It shouldn't just be Johnson County and our populated areas, that we really need more of our neighboring counties. And how can we help you with that, or help the supervisors or whomever?
I've been trying to figure that out for 27 years since I got into conservation. Before I came to the great county of Johnson, I was in Pocahontas County. Does anybody know where Pocahontas County is? If you might have driven through it to go to Okoboji, because it's at the intersection of Highway 3 and 4, but it's mostly cornfields and pigs. And so for a large portion of the state, that's the economics they want to push. For a lot of people down at the state capitol, that's the agenda they want to push. And it is hard. We have had, since 2010, the voters of Iowa have approved the Land and Conservation Trust at the state level. That will, if the sales tax ever changes in the state of Iowa, that it would trigger 3/8 of a cent to go to this. The state legislature won't do it. They always put something else in there that has negative impacts on our community. Their last attempt was, well, we're going to take away the local option sales tax that a lot of communities have, and we'll roll that into a state tax. Well, I can tell you a lot of the local officials, they hear that and they go, sure, just like all of the other things you said you were going to bring back to the county level or backfill. It just doesn't happen. And so although we'd love to see it all over, you can see it's the large metropolitan areas that are pushing this, that understand the importance of this, and hopefully it will expand outward from those locations. But we keep working all the time to improve that. But it's hard, as a conservationist, and I think a lot of us in here that are environmentalists and care about, it's hard to look every day at the pain that's going on in our environment and continue to push forward, because we just sometimes don't feel like we're making ground. But when we have something like this, and Story County has something like this, and Polk and Lynn, I go, there is a chance. There's an opportunity. We're making progress. And so these are things that we need to talk to our friends, family, neighbors. Have those hard discussions, right? If you're talking about politics anyway, they're not going to be fun. So have those hard discussions and say, this should be a bipartisan thing. It shouldn't matter, because we all get up, all of our bodies are made of water, we all breathe air, right? We all need land to grow food that sustains us. This is important to all of us. If that conservation, if that land doesn't exist, if all those natural resources don't exist, we don't exist.
I believe it's about time for us to end our forum. Thank you, Pat and Brad and Josh, for a thorough and informative overview of the $30 million conservation bond measure that will be on our ballots in the November 5 election. Again, thank you, our audience, for joining us this evening. Recordings of this evening's lecture will be posted on the League of Women Voters Johnson County website, and also on the Iowa City Public Library's Library Channel website for those unable to attend this evening or those who would like to see it again. For those of you who are interested in becoming League of Women Voter members, please take a brochure or go directly to our website, LWVJC.org. So let's thank our presenters.